Hi, I'm Kristen and I am a pregnancy coach who works with mamas all over the world. I help you go from anxious and overwhelmed to enjoying your pregnancy, preparing for a sacred natural birth, and giving your baby the beautiful beginning that you are dreaming of. Today, let's talk about the 4 big myths of natural childbirth. The first big myth is that it's just natural, and that's where most moms get stuck. They get stuck on it's just natural or a slight variation, which is it's just natural and it's all about choice, which I think might be rooted a bit in our consumer culture today. So let's tackle these two at the same time because the end result of both of them is the same. You don't do anything more than that. You decide, I want to have a natural birth, it's just natural, or I choose to have a natural birth, that's my choice, and then somehow we just expect it to happen. But the truth is that a lot more goes into preparing for birth. You need to do intellectual preparation. You need to do practical preparation, like what am I going to do when these contractions really start? Because as natural as they are intense. I have had 8 babies, 8 natural births, and I can tell you ladies that every single one of those births was an amazing, blessed experience for me, and every single one of them had some intensity to it. And I was grateful for the skills that I used because the skills that I learned during pregnancy became part of the instinct that came to me and that I used during my birthing time, and that is part of what went into those beautiful, ecstatic, transformational birth experiences that got my baby and myself off to a beautiful start. So yes, birth is natural, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to prepare for it. In fact, we live in this time, in this world where there's so much going on. There are so many fears and things that aren't even ours. They just come to us culturally, and ignorance that comes to us culturally because pregnancy and birth aren't talked about. So it takes preparation on a level because not only do we have our own fears that might come up legitimately, but we have this other stuff. And so it is worth taking some time to prepare intentionally because of that. Now, the second myth is that you don't need to prepare if you've got a doula or a midwife. And I think a lot of women feel this way. Unfortunately, part of the problem is that midwife means really different things, regardless or, depending on where you are in the world. So in some places, you might have a midwife who you see for every single visit, and she does childbirth education, and she does nutrition education, and you know she's the one that's going to be there at your birth, supporting you. In other areas, you may see a few different midwives. Some of you may see a different midwife at every visit, and you may not know the midwife who shows up at your house for a birth or who you meet at the hospital when you get there to have your baby. There are all kinds of experiences. You might have a midwife who you see every time, but she does very little in the way of birth preparation. And all of those varieties can be okay, and they can meet women's needs and that you get pregnancy care from a midwife and you have a midwife at your birth. But there are varying levels of support there. So I would recommend that you plan to prepare for birth, even if you have a midwife, and even if you have a doula and your doula is going to meet with you before birth. That's a great time to talk with her about the things that you can be doing when you guys aren't meeting to help prepare for birth, because she's going to be there and help you and support you. And the same is true if you have a midwife that you know is going to be really supportive. But if you've done the work, if you've learned the practical skills and the things to help you with that intensity of labor, and you've done that mental and emotional and spiritual work that I alluded to a moment ago, things are going to be a lot easier, and your doula or your midwife is going to be able to step in and support you with much greater ease for them and much greater connection for the two of you, because you're already going to feel like you have an idea of how to work with this experience of labor and birth. Another thing, the third myth is that you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you prepare for a natural birth. Like, you don't want to set your heart on it too much because if it doesn't happen, maybe you'll be crushed. That fear is legitimate, and it's something that I felt with my 8 kiddos for sure. Even up to baby number 8, I still had anxieties and fears going into birth. But again, when you prepare for birth, and number 1, when you prepare throughout your pregnancy and stay low risk, this is one of the big things that I help my coaching clients with, it's much more likely that you're going to have a smooth, natural labor and birth. And then if you prepare so that you know things like not getting to the hospital too soon or not calling your birth team in too soon, letting labor establish and that good labor pattern get going, these are all things that can help ensure that it goes much more smoothly. So preparing for birth actually makes your natural birth more likely. Another thing that happens when you prepare is you have an intellectual understanding of what happens during birth, and you have an intellectual understanding of when emergencies are really emergencies and when you may be able to say, can we wait? In other words, you're more knowledgeable and you're able to work collaboratively with your care provider. So instead of feeling like your care provider is taking control away from you, you feel like you are collaborating. And even if something comes up and you need to have a quick discussion, you feel like you're able to have a discussion and you're making decisions together. And at the end, if something came up that you weren't expecting and your birth didn't go quite how you wanted it to, you might feel some sadness, but you won't feel the same sense of trauma and regret that you might have felt if you felt like all control was taken from you. And part of that is that you did the preparation, the intellectual preparation, and that you were able to use the skills that you had up until the point where things shifted and even all the way through. And you may realize that the birth that didn't go exactly how you wanted it to was the birth that taught you the most and brought you the most wisdom. I can think back to parts of most of my baby's births where I think, gosh, I wish that had gone a little bit different. But at the end, I know that there were things along the way with those births that really taught me a lot, and that's super important. And of course, the biggest myth, number 4, is that you can't do it. So many of you are hearing from so many people, friends and loved ones and family members, who tell you, gosh, you can't do it, either because they think it's foolish or dangerous, which doesn't make any sense, because birth is designed to work and natural birth is safe for most mothers and most babies, unless there's some sort of weird complication. But they also tell you, oh, you can't do it, you won't be able to make it. And to think this is somebody who loves me and supports me and they would say this to me. So what I want you to do, again, is prepare for birth, because you greatly increase your chances. And also, while you're doing that mental and emotional preparation for that beautiful birth, you're able to work through and let go of some of their fears. Because remember, anything that they say about you is actually about them. Their comfort levels, their feelings, and sometimes their feelings of inadequacy or guilt or regret. And when you do the work, that mental, emotional, spiritual work of preparing for birth, you're able to let go of that and go into your experience in a beautiful way. Like I said, I work with pregnant mamas all over the world. And if you would like some help, somebody to walk along beside you and support you as you stay healthy and low risk, as you prepare for that birth, as you do that emotional and spiritual work so that you are free to go in your birth with nobody else's baggage on board, but ready, confident, and happy to be giving you and your baby that chance, I would love to be with you, to walk alongside you. Head over to birthbabylife.com/beautiful, and let's set up a time that we can talk this week about what that support looks like for you.